Hello, my name is Dalia Yan. This is my Flatiron School Ruby on Rails project called Vibing House, and in this video I will be walking you through how I built out my code, my models, controllers, my views, my routes, my gems, everything required to make my Ruby on Rails application. So I started off by running this command here, gem install Rails. So I installed Rails into the folder that I wanted to make my application in, and I ran Rails new command app, or my application's name, Vibing House, and it provided me with all of these folders needed to create my application. I ran bundle install, and then I was ready to begin coding out my application. So the idea behind my project is that I wanted to have different users. Every user has the option of creating a house or many houses, and then from there, after the user creates their house, they create their rooms to their house, which is a join table for me called house rooms, because I organized the specific rooms that are already in a house. So in my seed file over here, have my rooms, and then when you make your house, you have the option of choosing the list I provided, and then from there, my join table, which is my house rooms, adds the customizations and saves every user's customizations to their house in their join table. So I can start by sharing my routes, how I built out the run through of how my application kind of runs. So I started my application before I even knew what OmniAuth was by my line 5, sessions welcome. What this does is that it takes my controller, my sessions, it takes my view file in my sessions, which is called welcome over here, and the root, as soon as the user logs in, it brings you to my sessions view file, the folder labeled welcome, which is this nice little page right here that allows the user to sign up or log in or sign up with Google. So I will just pull up my server so you have access to see what it is I'm talking about. Okay, so right here is my welcome page in a beautiful HTML. This is what it looks like. So you see on the root over here, the path is just my welcome page with the user's option of logging in, signing up, or logging in with Google. So I have my session controller, which allows me to remember which user is returning, and if it's a returning user, have them sign in and have all the data associated with them stored through my sessions. I also have my user controller. If someone is new to my application and doesn't have an account, that they can log in and make themselves welcome on my site with their new login information. So I have my user controller here, which allows a new person to come in and make an account, and I have my sessions controller here, which allows returning users to come in and make their account. And for each controller, I have the routes here. So in my application, if you did /signup, it will lead you to my users.new view file. So if we try /signup, you're brought here to my users view page, which I can show you in HTML. Okay, so if it's a new person, they will log in, and this root /signup will bring them to the sign up page. And then again in my routes, if they are a returning user, they have the login option, and they will see my sessions new file right here, which allows returning users to log in. translates over right here. And then from there, I added in my models just some protection so that the user, when they make their username and password, that it has the active record method of secure password, which enables my user to type in their password and ensure that nobody in my application can decode or debug their password, which is something done behind the scenes. I also validate that the username is present, so you have to have a username before you can make an account. And I also on line 7 validated the uniqueness of my username because I didn't want a returning user with the name Joe to be able to make 5 million accounts with the same name. So those were some validations I included for my user. And I will show you what happens when the user signs in. So we have Joe coming in, Joe's show page, which is my views user show page, translates over. So you see what they see, well, what I see in my application, the user sees in the server. So what I wanted the user to be able to do from here is to create a house, and I didn't want a house to be able to be created without a user signing in. So if you see on the bottom right, on the bottom left of this server screen, that the localhost /users/3, because Joe is user 3 /houses/new is a nested route, which I did in my routes folder right here, just to ensure that when a house is created, that it has to have a user associated to a house, and that a house can't be created without that requirement. So if Joe wants to make a house right here, Joe can name Joe's example for everyone to see. The user has the option of, selecting their color, their house worth, how large their house is, and then from there in my house controller, I wanted the user to have to make a room after making their house. So right here in my create, after the house is saved, they're directed to the new house room path, which is here in my roots. I have my house rooms nested in my houses because I didn't want them to make a house room. And for my application, what a house room is it is a customization. When you buy a house already comes with the specified rooms to the house. So the house room is the customization that the user does to make their rooms to their house to their liking. That is my join table. So after you make your house, I directed the user to the house rooms path, taking in the house object, because this house room, as we see here in the link, belongs to house number 14 because that is the 14th house. And then these are the rooms specific to this house. So Joe can make his kitchen, make his windows, make his crazy windows. And then I also added some required and limitation fields to the database so that crazy data can't be put in here. And then from there, we're brought to my house rooms show page, which I can show you right now. Right here. So if the user is the owner of this house room, they have the option of creating another house. So Joe wants to make another living room for this lovely house, and he can do that. And then if we go to the home page and we click this link, this is to the index for all my houses. We can see Joe's example rounding out at number 14. So I can show you that. Houses index, which is also in my houses controller here. So it just returns all of the houses, and then here it just filters through all of the data and it presents you with all the houses in an organized list. So that is my house index view. And then from here, the user has access to everyone else's houses. So if we look at Peggy's Pig Palace, we can see it's house number 1. And if we look at Joe's White Castle, we can see all of the specifications for this house. Now, if we click this link, it's a nested route within my houses that allows you to see all of the house rooms, so the customized rooms for the specific house. And right here we see that that house that we just looked at, house number 13, only has 1 sunroom. How I did that was in my house rooms controller. I wanted to be able to view all of the houses specific to, or all of the rooms specific to the house that I'm looking at. So I, in my index, I made sure that it took in the argument of the house ID being the params of the house ID. So if I had the house, then the house room would be equal to the house rooms. Which you see translated over into my index page. From there, Joe can look at the house he just made, and because he is the owner of this house, he is the current user, he's the session ID, he has the ability to edit this house or delete it, as we see here in line 24 through 30. Joe can edit his house. So Joe's example 88, he doesn't like the color, he wants it to be bigger, update it, and we see right here on line 14, Joe's example was updated. He also has the option of deleting that house, which is shown in the controller for the houses. I can show you that. Right here, he destroys the house, and then if he were to destroy it, he'd still be logged in. He would just be redirected to the root path, so he can delete the house. Ooh, excuse me. We'll go back to that. From here, Joe has the option of viewing the most expensive houses, which is a scope, class scope that I included. So here, when he clicks this link, he gets a list of the most expensive to the least expensive houses. So how I did that was in my house model right here. I created a scope called most expensive houses, where the price has, if it's greater than or equal to 999 million, I have this class method, most expensive house, where it's ordered, where I order the price from descending. And then this translates over into my house controller right here, where I have a method called most expensive, and it takes in all of the houses, and then it calls that class method most expensive houses on the house. And I also have a view file right here for my houses called most expensive, where it's similar to my index, and then it just takes all of the houses and goes through each one while ordering them by most expensive to least expensive house, which is right here. And that translates over right here. We can look in the server, or Peggy's Pig Palace has a crazy number for the cost of her house, while Joe's poor house only has $1 worth of house. And the example above that is $34, so on and so forth. So the way I can talk about my controllers and how they work, these controllers are specific to the models that I have here. So when I have a model, it has associations with other models. So my house has many users. My house has many house rooms, because one house can have plenty of rooms. It also has many rooms through house rooms, because my house rooms is the join table. When you, again, I explained, when you have a house or you buy a house, it comes with rooms already set, which I did in my seed file. Now what house rooms does is it's the customization between the house and the house rooms, and it is the way the user wants to design their rooms. It allows a map functionality. I'm going to delete this line because I don't have a comment function. In my house rooms, this belongs to the house and it belongs to the room, and I'm just validating some information that would be passing through that house room. My room has many house rooms, it has many houses through house rooms, and my room also has many users because the users make the house makes the room. That's how it works, and I just set a validation for that. Okay, and then my user also has the active record method of has secure password. It has many houses, and it also has many rooms through the houses, and I just add some validations for the username. I also created my OmniAuth, which allows the user to log in with Google, and here we have a class method from OmniAuth, which I then call in my users controller, my sessions controller, and I just call that from OmniAuth class method on user, and then I just added some validations to make sure that it is the correct user. So that is how that portion of my application works, and I can show you that from the root page. If I click this link, it'll sign in to my account because I am signed into my Google account, and then I have the option of creating my houses and then my rooms. Okay, and then something else that was a requirement for this project was creating error messages. So if I tried to duplicate Joe's White Castle, even though I already know that exists, the error message is that this name has already been taken. So it's like, okay, let's add my own Joe's White Castle and name it some crazy thing, and then it allows me to submit that form. And then I just add my room requirements. And if we look on the home page, we can see Joe's White Castle. It belongs to me, so I can edit or delete it. I can look at the rooms that I just created, and that is how that part works. So what I found in this application and some of the problems I encountered that I could just talk about was, let me just pull up that list of my many problems. When I made this application, I used the corneal gem because it was familiar to me, because I used it for my Sinatra on Rails project, but my corneal gem does not run my application using Rails. It doesn't use Ruby on Rails. It has like no idea what it is. So when I first started my application, I used the corneal gem, and I realized I didn't have the Rails functionality I needed. I spoke to my cohort lead, and they informed me of that. So everything that I did in that previous project, I just translated it over to my Vibing House project, and I started to get things working on there. Something else I encountered were within my controllers and my view files. I had nested routes, and that required me, when I wanted to call certain information, to have some nested objects in those parameters that I'm sending, to make sure that, so say I wanted to create a house, that before I can create a house, I had to make sure I had the correct ID. So when you're creating a house, that the house has a user ID, which is set equal to the session ID. Just ensuring that when I do create a house, that it belongs to a user, that it's someone signed in and not someone trying to hack the application and make a house without user information. I also really struggled with my nested forms. A lot of my project is nested. So with my houses, I had to follow the URL of users' houses path with the object of houses, also taking into consideration their user. I can show you in my terminal here. That when I created my my new house rooms, which are the customized rooms, that it's nested inside my houses. When I want to create a new house, that it is nested within the user ID to be able to make that new house. So I really struggled with correctly calling my forms to make sure that they took in the right arguments and objects and routes as I went through this project. Something that I encountered that stalled me for a little bit was the requirement of having a nested database. Prior to my house rooms, I had comment, and I wanted to make that the relationship between my houses and my users, but it didn't really work out for me. So I decided to do house rooms, which are the customized rooms, to be the in between and have many-to-many relationship between houses and rooms. That was something I found out I didn't have in the second week of making my project, that I had to work on and incorporate. Something else that I struggled with doing was in my controller for my houses and for my house rooms. In the show method, I wanted to show a specific house, so I had to pass in the argument of that house ID, and then again in my house rooms I had to pass in the specific argument of the house room ID to make sure that the correct house that I wanted the user to be able to see would show. So I just have my view file here. You can see that the house room.room.name, I wanted to display the house name in the view file, or in the view field, so that had to be taken into consideration when making my show views. And that idea also trickled into my edit. I was finding that I had a hard time I edited a form, and every time I clicked to submit that form, it would return to me a different form that I didn't edit, and I struggled with that. And I also had to send in manually the params for that ID so that the correct form would show up. Another problem I encountered was setting up strong parameters, again, to protect me and my information against hackers. And in my houses controller, I have that when you're creating a house, that it ensures that the user ID is set equal to the session ID. So if somebody wanted to change the URL from users/1 to users/3 and create new houses that way, that they wouldn't be able to. My project my model associations was something that I had to get comfortable with, knowing what belongs to what has many whats. For me, the validation and what that meant for the application was easier for me to understand than knowing really how to utilize my join table of my house rooms. I also didn't know how to wrap my mind around the idea of error messages in my application, which I found articles, which I'll also link in the description box of this video. I'll link my blog post about this application, where I really go through in depth all the problems I encountered when making the application, all of the articles and resources I found that are also linked in my blog. I found a great resource that helped me understand why or how to make these error messages and how they display in the server. Another problem, or something that I struggled with understanding, which I already discussed previously, with my scope method validation, where I just showed you guys my houses. I wanted to find the most expensive house, so I just did that. That's also linked in my blog as to the reading I read that helped me understand how to do that and like why it was necessary, besides it being a project requirement. Omnioth was something else that I struggled with. As you see on my welcome page, I have a link to sign up with Google. That was something that took me a minute to understand. There's different, Omnioth is like all over my application. I found a great resource, a good reading that was clear and precise and like walked me through how to do that, which is also linked in my blog. That was something that I struggled with for a couple of days. Another thing I encountered with this project early on was forgetting to put S's on the end of my controllers, and that was something that took a good amount of time from me. So I just went through how my application kind of works. Like, you call my roots have their directions in their view folders, and that's how that works. And then I have my nested routes right here, so that takes in my controllers, the relationships with models, which are right here, and then it looks for my views, and that translates over in the nested forms that I have to ensure that the correct arguments and objects are being called in those forms, and being submitted to the application. My models have those validations to ensure funky data isn't submitted to the application, and then I also have some things protecting me in my forms right here. So I put required, which makes it so that the user can't try to submit data without that field being inputted. I have minimums and maximums to the data submitted because I wanted to limit the price of the house or the size of a house to something reasonable. So that kind of took care of that for me. I will also, in the bottom of this video, be linking a project walkthrough as a user, so you can see how a user uses my application and how to get through everything as a whole.